let me go into a little cleanup here because we get that end of file error, and I want to kind of explain what's going on in case anybody runs into it. So without setup, you can do both declarations and you can set stuff equal to each other. So I can go declarations and initializations, and that's fine, right? X has only been set once. After the declaration, it's all good. The second you put setup in, which is how you're supposed to use processing, you're supposed to use it with void setup, and it's kind of assumed that void setup will always be there. Then you can only do declarations before setup. So you have to set this up here, okay? And you might be saying, wait a second, but why can't we initialize it in setup? Well, processing gets mad if you initialize this in setup, okay? And the reason is because setup can technically be called more than once, all right? And I know what you're saying. Wait, setup's only supposed to be called once when you hit play. But in void draw, there's nothing stopping you from invoking setup again. So there's no guarantee that setup won't be called. Now, processing tells you not to do that. But then if you look on the processing forums, it says, yeah, this is a perfectly legal way to reset your program, is to call void setup. So if you know what you're doing, and some of these media artists who use processing kind of know what they're doing, they will sometimes utilize this idea of calling void setup again. All right. So at that point, you're resetting X again, right? And that's not allowed. So it'll scream at you here. So if you have setup, you should initialize your final variable immediately, right? This is different from a class. In a class, if I have a private final variable, okay, I can initialize it immediately, or I can initialize it in the constructor, okay? So Java allows you to initialize it immediately or initialize it in the constructor. Initializing it in the constructor is the only way to have the user choose the value of the final variable when the user makes an instance of that, or an object of that class, right, with new whatever, right, and passes in a value it might want for that final variable. Okay. We'll look at static in the next video, and then we'll look at both together. Hopefully that makes sense. This is just like a little processing thing that's kind of weird, but not a big deal. Just understand the concept that when you have setup here, you can only have declarations up here before setup. Okay. And if you get that end of file error, think about, oh, am I doing something where there's something more than a declaration up here?